A group of Republicans at the Heritage Foundation released a playbook for the next presidential administration called Project 2025. Now, this is something that the Heritage Foundation has done every 4 years since 1980, but this year is different because this year the Democrats noticed. What makes Project 2025 so scary? Well, it voices all the things that those sneaky, dirty Republicans want. Things like throwing all the Democrats who oppose our glorious leader Donald Trump in Guantanamo and forcing every woman into cooking a nice dinner for her husband after he comes home from a long day of work. And sure, none of this exists except in the imagination of Democrats, and President Trump actually called Project 2025 ridiculous, but those wily Democrats weren't fooled at all. The fact that Donald Trump disavowed the plan only means that he really likes it, because Donald Trump is a pants-on-fire liar, and the Democrats believe the opposite of whatever he says. Joe Biden said Project 2025 is dangerous, but trailed off incoherently when the puppeteer who controls the movements of his mouth got his hand stuck and could no longer make the president speak. We break it all down today. I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. Okay, hello everyone. So today on the podcast, we are going to be talking about Project 2025. We are going to read through the actual GOP agenda that they released this week, and we're going to be talking about the snap elections that took place in France. But first, Project 2025. Let's start by explaining what Project 2025 is. Project 2025 was a playbook put out by the Republicans, not by the Republicans, by a Republican think tank called the Heritage Foundation. People who watch the show might be familiar with the Heritage Foundation. It's a very large, probably the most successful Republican think tank. All they do is that means that it's a bunch of people who get together and talk Republican policy. They put out this playbook, and as they have done every year since 1980, so it is not a new thing for the Republicans to do this, and this year's a little bit different, but not really, and we're going to go through that just a little bit. The thing is 900 pages long, okay? There were a ton of people who worked on this, each guy. Oh, but first, for those of you watching, look, Winnie wants to say hi. Say hello, Winnie. Hello. All right, get out of here. My goodness, she's always in my business. So it's 900 pages long. A lot of people worked on it, okay? So there's not a lot of people who have actually read Project 2025, myself included. I'm not reading a 900-page playbook written by a bunch of people who are not in the government. The Heritage Foundation is staffed by a bunch of people who worked for Donald Trump, but it is not the Republican platform. The GOP released their own platform. We're going to go into that later. We're just going to read it on the podcast. But there are things in here that got people worried because the Heritage Foundation is staffed with Donald Trump's old staffers. So they said, oh my gosh, Donald Trump, the people who work for Donald Trump are right. They wrote this playbook and we don't like it because it's scary, because it says all this stuff. Now, I've read big excerpts of it, and the reality is it seems pretty, for the most part, it seems like standard Republican stuff for the most part. I know some people object because we got this new term that's on the rise of Christian nationalism, and they mention God a lot in the playbook. But the reality is that I don't see any issues with it. It's not as though, with the exception of the abortion bit of it and the stance on gay marriage, right? These are the only two areas in the entire thing that seem to butt up against the idea of freedom of speech and Christianity versus the First Amendment. I don't really see an issue with it, me personally, but we'll get into that. Let's just go through a couple of the things in there that people are talking about. So here are some of the things that I read. I read a bunch of articles today at a bunch of publications, and here are just some of the things listed that people were talking about in a negative way. And they're just going to do a quick bullet point here. So Project 2025, it calls for sacking of a gigantic portion of the civil servants who work in the executive branch, expanding the power of the executive. It's going to abolish the Department of Education. It's got a lot of tax cuts, ban on pornography, ban on the abortion pill, increases funding for the border wall, a complete overhaul of the visa categories for immigration, and a lot more stuff. These are some of the big points, though, that people were talking about when you read it online. The first one, which I think is funny, and it's kind of hard to talk about this because people don't understand civics. They don't understand how government works. We kind of talked, I think we talked about this last week on last week's episode, but maybe not. We have 3 branches of government. The federal government. We have the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. The president is the head of the executive branch. So Project 2025 is putting forward the idea of what they call the unified executive theory. This is something people talk about this like it's a fringe theory, and I don't understand why. The president is the head of the executive branch. He is in charge of the executive branch. He has the authority in the executive branch to do what he wants. That is my belief. That is what's spelled out in the Constitution in Article 2. If you ask me, the unified executive theory makes sense. People are upset because part of this playbook calls for a firing of a large section of executive branch employees and the replacing of them with other people. Okay, this is fine to me. People are talking about this as if it's some sort of authoritarian, tyrannical move. The president's in charge of these people. You work at the pleasure of the president if you work in the executive branch. That's my opinion. That is what I believe Article 2 specifies in the Constitution, is that the executive power is vested in the president, which means that he is in charge of the executive branch. The executive branch has expanded. I think it has 3 million employees. Now, the president, in my view and in theory, is the direct boss of every single person in there, if he chooses to be. So when you talk about firing people who work for the government, the president has that authority, in my opinion. A lot of people are upset about this because they're saying that this is going to be a political clearinghouse, and I agree, it will be. But I also think that this is a good thing. Many of these unelected bureaucrats who get stuck in these jobs through administration after administration after administration are a hindrance on government. I think you fire a whole bunch of them and you don't replace them. They're talking about replacing most of them. Don't replace them. Get rid of the function that they serve. That is what I would do. I would want to shrink the executive branch and fire a whole bunch of people. I think this would be good. I do not think the unified executive theory is a total fringe movement like a lot of these publications are trying to explain it is. Project 2025 puts that forward. Other things, the abolishment of the Department of Education. I've always agreed with that. I don't see why there needs to be a federal Department of Education. The states should be responsible for that, and your local jurisdictions should be responsible for that. There's no reason the federal government is funding education. That is a state's issue. It's not part of the federal government's job to fund education. Abolish the whole thing. I agree with this. Tax cuts, pretty standard Republican stuff. The other 2 things, though, the big 2 things that people are upset about, and where we're seeing this idea that it's a bunch of Christian nationalists that are writing this Project 2025 and are really the people who they're trying to impose some sort of theocracy. The 2 areas where you can find this are the banning of the abortion pill and the banning of pornography. Now, both of these things, first of all, Donald Trump and the GOP specifically have said that they are not interested in a nationwide ban of abortion. They both have said this. They're both on record saying this, so any nationwide ban of abortion is just not going to happen under the next Republican presidency because Donald Trump has said no. But the banning of the abortion pill over the counter, that's an interesting issue because it seemed incredibly politicized that the FDA approved this for over-the-counter use right after the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Clinic. I had to remember the name of the case. Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Clinic came out by the Supreme Court. That was the case that overruled Roe versus Wade. So the FDA politicized this matter already. It's already been politicized. The idea that you can just go now buy an abortion pill over the counter. You've always been able to buy Plan B. This is a different thing. This is not the same thing as Plan B. This is an actual abortion pill. This is how most abortions happen. And we actually had an uptick in abortions after we overruled Roe versus Wade. So they want to ban that. As, again, been a standard Republican talking point. Republicans have always been anti-abortion for as long as I can remember, at least. And the Democrats also used to be kind of anti-abortion. Now it's shout your abortion and be proud of it. But it used to be, as the old Clinton line went, safe, legal, and rare. And somehow that changed. Now we think abortion is a net good or moral in some way. I don't understand it, but that's just the way it is. So this is going to be an argument, but states are going to do what states are going to do. That was the whole point of overturning Roe versus Wade, is that it's a state's issue now. So if you live in a state like California and New York, you can have an abortion until the kid's 18 years old. And if you live in a place like Texas or Georgia, you might not be able to get an abortion. Okay, that's just the way it is. This is not the scariest thing in the world. I understand that people think that it is, but I don't understand it because, again, this is going to be a state's issue, or say that the FDA just makes it prescription again, which means you have to go to a doctor, which means it's a state issue because certain states are going to be allowed to prescribe it and certain states aren't. Again, the idea that you can buy it over the counter or through the federal mail seems kind of ridiculous to me, but people are upset about it. The other one being the ban on pornography. Again, never going to happen. It's just not a thing that's going to happen. Although I have seen some states attempt to age restrict it. Okay, maybe. That's fine. I know certain sites, there's a big in the news, like Pornhub, has actually shut down. You're not able to access it in certain states in the United States because they have an age verification law. Pornography is a big deal. I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to say that pornography is the most evil thing in the world. I'm not going to say that. I do think it's probably an unhealthy thing that a lot of people get involved in, and that is an issue that we have got to figure out. A ban is not going to happen. The fact that it's in this playbook shouldn't scare anyone. No Republican in their right mind is going to try and outlaw pornography. It's just not going to happen. So the things that people are getting upset about are things that Donald Trump is not even for. So I don't understand the fear of Project 2025. Again, if it's the concern that somehow the Republicans are going to implement a Christian theocracy on the country, I just don't see any proof of that. And the fact that people want to point to this document and say, well, it says God here and it says God there, and that's bad. I say, okay, well, why? And at what point does it say anything about you're only allowed to be a Christian, you're only allowed to do this, you're only allowed to do that? I got in not a debate, but I was kind of having a conversation about this. And I said that the reality is that the country, the United States, was founded on Christian morality. It was founded on the morality of the God of Abraham. That is a fact. All of the founding fathers who wrote the documents that we take for granted, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, all the amendments, they were all old white Christians. That's just the way it was. Actually, a lot of them weren't old. All right, I'm not that old, and I think Thomas Jefferson was 34, 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. So they weren't all as old as we think they are. But the reality is that they were all this person. Even people like Thomas Jefferson, people will call him a deist. He wasn't an atheist. He wasn't agnostic. He believed in God. He believed in the God of Abraham, of the Bible. Even him, who was the most, what people consider the most anti-religious, he was still a Christian, and he wrote the Declaration with the preamble being that mentioning God. And let's pull it up here just so we get the words exactly right, because I want to read the preamble. So it says, after the first, there's a little paragraph, and then it has the beginning of the Declaration where it says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." And then let's read this next line too. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Okay, so those are very important lines there in the history of the United States. They mention the Creator. They mention that, and by the Creator, what he was referring to was the God of Abraham. So we're worried about slipping into a Christian theocracy. The entire government was run by white Christian males in the 1700s. Now, I think it's great that we have the First Amendment, because they also wrote the First Amendment, which prevented Congress from implementing a statewide religion. You're allowed in the United States to believe whatever you want. No one can stop you, nor should anyone stop you. Believe whatever you want, because the same guys who wrote those words are the same guys, James Madison, who wrote the First Amendment, which said Congress shall establish no national religion. You are allowed to worship however you please. And now, flash forward 2024, going into 2025, we have a bunch of people in Congress who are Christians, who are writing things that they believe are true and good and will better society. But as far as I'm aware, nobody on the right is trying to force Christianity onto the masses. It's just not happening. So wherever people talk about this, I just don't see it. I don't see any evidence for it. I don't know anyone in Congress who's saying, you have to believe in this, you have to believe in Christ and Christianity and Jesus and everything. I don't see that person. I don't know where they exist. So when you read a document like this and it mentions God, don't get scared. Don't be afraid. It's okay. A lot of people, actually most people in the world, believe in God. And that's okay. They can do that. As long as they're not saying you have to do this or we're going to cut your head off, then you should just be fine with it. And that'll be okay. You'll be all right. And no one is trying to force their morality on you. A large section of the country believes in the kind of things that are listed in Project 2025. They believe pornography is bad, abortion is evil. When we talk about abortion being a woman's rights issue, we forget to mention the fact that half of the women in this country do not support abortion. And that is something that apparently gets lost in translation as if it's a woman's issue, but it's not. It's a Democrat versus Republican issue. Women also don't like abortion. Okay, there you go. Republican women don't like it. Christian women don't like it, and that's okay. You're allowed to like it. You're allowed to not like it, and that's why we have elections. That's why we have votes. That's why we do all these things. So don't be scared. Don't be scared of Project 2025 because also it has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Here is a quote. Donald Trump said this, quote, "I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who is behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal." End quote. That is what Donald Trump has said about 2025. So when Joe Biden comes out there and says, oh my God, the Republicans want Project 2025, Donald Trump called it absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Donald Trump, he said this. He has not endorsed it. He has actually gone away from it. He's run away from it. So don't be afraid. It's okay. You don't have to believe the Democrats and Joe Biden when they say that Project 2025 is going to be a reality. This is just a talking point. It's like if I picked a random Democrat to run against instead of Joe Biden. So if I picked Jamal Bowman, who's not in Congress anymore, remember we danced him off because it's a great day. But if I picked Jamal Bowman and all the stupid things he said and then said, look at all these things that Joe Biden believes, that's what they're doing. They're picking Republicans who aren't Donald Trump and they're running against them. They have nothing to do with Donald Trump. Donald Trump didn't write this. His team didn't write this. He didn't endorse this. And they're running against it as if it comes out of Donald Trump's mouth. That's what the goal is. It would be the exact same thing if we just picked some random Democrat, ran against him, and said, look at what Joe Biden believes. Not the same thing. Don't be worried. Because the GOP actually put their platform out for us to read. So we can do that. Let's do that while we're right here. So the GOP has put out their own platform. Here is what the Republicans will actually want to do. It is a 20-point bulletin. I'm just going to read through it briefly. This is the actual platform. Don't worry about the 900 pages that the Heritage Foundation put out. I have no problems with the Heritage Foundation. I don't know if David Horowitz still runs it, but I have tremendous respect for David Horowitz and the Heritage Foundation. But Project 2025 has nothing to do with Donald Trump or the Republican platform. Here is the Republican platform straight from the GOP. Number 1, seal the border and stop the migrant invasion. Number 2, carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. Number 3, end inflation and make America affordable again. Number 4, make America the dominant energy producer in the world by far. Number 5, stop outsourcing and turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. Number 6, large tax cut for workers and no tax on tips. Number 7, defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. Number 8, prevent World War III, restore peace in Europe and in the Middle East, and build a great Iron Dome missile defense shield over our entire country, all made in America. Number 9, end the weaponization of government against the American people. Number 10, stop the migrant crime epidemic, demolish the foreign drug cartels, crush gang violence, and lock up violent offenders. 11, Rebuild our cities, including Washington, D.C., making them safe, clean, and beautiful again. 12, strengthen and modernize our military, making it without question the strongest and most powerful in the world. 13, keep the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. 14, fight for and protect Social Security and Medicare with no cuts, including no changes to the retirement age. 15, cancel the electric vehicle mandate and cut costly and burdensome regulations. 16, cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, radical gender ideology, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. 17, keep men out of women's sports. 18, deport pro-Hamas radicals and make our college campuses safe and patriotic again. 19, secure our elections, including same-day voting, voter identification, paper ballots, and proof of citizenship. 20, unite the country by bringing it to a new and record level of success. Okay, which of these things are so drastic and evil that you have to be worried about it? Okay, so you disagree that there should be deportation and we need to stop illegal immigration. Okay, so does it make people evil? Are you worried that the Republicans say they want to seal the border and deport illegal immigrants? Maybe you are. Maybe that makes you really worried. Maybe you think that's evil. Okay. End inflation? Seems pretty self-explanatory. Make America the best energy producer in the world. Right? Maybe you're a climate guy. Maybe you don't like it. Okay, is it evil? Is it bad? Do you hate it? Are you scared? Stop outsourcing, tax cuts, defend the Constitution, including freedom of religion. That's important because it's in there. Prevent World War III. Don't let the government be used against the people. Stop crime. Rebuild cities. Strengthen the military. Keep the U.S. dollar strong. Protect Social Security. No electrical vehicle mandate. Okay. Maybe, again, the climate thing, I guess. Cut federal funding for schools that push critical race theory. Oh, no. This is terrible. Run for the hills. Keep men out of women's sports. Okay. Deport pro-Hamas radicals. Why not? Why do we want pro-Hamas radicals who are not American citizens to be polluting our college campuses? Get rid of them. Sounds great to me. Secure the elections. Unite the country. What on the GOP platform are you afraid of? Does that sound like Project 2025? Does it sound like a really bunch of scary stuff? They didn't even mention abortion. They didn't mention anything about gay marriage. They're not trying to take anyone's rights away. What are we talking about? The only people who are quote-unquote threatened are violent criminals and illegal immigrants. And the illegal immigrants only say, well, you're here illegally, you're breaking the law, you get to go home. There's not like, we're going to lock them up, we're not going to do this. It said, if you commit crimes, you're going to jail, and if you're illegal, you're going back to your home country. What American citizen has to feel threatened by this platform? Does it sound like anyone's coming to take anything from you? In fact, what I heard in the GOP platform is protect the rights of Americans and X, Y, and Z. Protect their freedom of religion, freedom of speech. Don't weaponize the government against the people. These are important things. What are we afraid of? I don't know. I don't understand where the fear-mongering... I do understand the fear-mongering by the media, but don't fall for it. Don't be a person who believes everything the media says. They are lying to you because that's what they do. They want you to vote Democrat. The media is on the Democrat ticket, so they lie about the Republicans because it's easy, because most people don't know. And then your aunt gets on Facebook and posts an article about how Project 2025 is going to take away the 19th Amendment and women aren't going to be able to vote. And you go, oh, my God, the Republicans want to take away women's rights to vote. And then you go, what? Who? Where? Somebody said Project 2025 said this, and we have to watch out because someone got up at the BET Awards and told us Project 2025 is scary, and now we're all scared. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid. Republicans don't want to take rights away from anyone. It's just not the way it is. You can read the platform yourself. You do not have to rely on some stupid news site to tell you the facts. You can read it. You can go right here. It is on this is not the right one. Silly me. I was about to read archives.gov. GOP.com. RNC Platform Committee. That's it. You can go right now and read it. It's just right there. It's so easy for you to find on your own. You do not need to rely on MSNBC or CNN or your aunt Darlene with the anxiety problem. You don't need to rely on these people to tell you the news. Just go read it. Because I just read it to you, and if you're watching this, now you know. Nothing scary. No one's coming for your rights. No one wants it. You'll be fine. a Republican or Democrat wins, you'll hopefully be fine. I think Joe Biden will be worse for the country at this point. That's just my opinion. You're allowed to have your own opinion. I'm not telling you how to think. I just think Joe Biden's done a terrible job as president. I think Donald Trump will be better. That's my opinion. Don't be afraid. Donald Trump has no interest in taking away your rights, so let's just move on. I want to touch on something else briefly because I don't want to spend a lot of time because mainly because I don't like France and I don't want to talk about them. But we're going to talk about France because they had this weird election that a lot of people are misreading, and we're going to just touch on it briefly. Europe, in general, has been governed in a very left-leaning way for a long time. And you are seeing now, for the first time in decades, a swing to the right. This is mainly caused by unchecked illegal immigration into Europe. Douglas Murray wrote a book. It's behind me on the shelf called The Strange Death of Europe. It's one of the best books you will ever read. Actually, hold on. We're going to get it. Well, give me 1 second. Yeah. Okay. All right. We got it. Hold on. Douglas Murray, for those of you who don't know, here's the book right here. Douglas Murray, The Strange Death of Europe. This is one of the best books you could read if you want to understand what is happening in Europe right now today and why. Douglas Murray is the current version of Christopher Hitchens. He is incredibly smart, a great debater, and a wonderful writer. He wrote this book in 2014, I want to say, 10 years ago. Basically, he outlined exactly why Europe is leaning right today. Because they have immigration in massive amounts from Africa and the Middle East, which are changing the demographics of their country, and you are seeing a backlash to this because people want, if you live in France, you want France to be French. There's nothing wrong with this. If you live in Germany, you want Germany to be Germany. If you live in Sweden, you want Sweden to be Sweden. I live in America, I want America to be America. There's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing bigoted or hateful about saying this. When you have people, imagine that I have a country of 1 million people. And my country is my country. And there's 1 million of us, and we all have a certain culture and lifestyle, and it's great and wonderful and awesome. And then we import 500,000 people from a different country with a different culture and different beliefs and different ways of living. Does the country look the same? The answer is no, because the country changes, and when it changes rapidly, people don't like it. What's happening in Europe right now is that the countries are changing rapidly because the immigration is unchecked and there's too much of it in Europe. So Europe has started to swing right because of this. And the people right now are lying about what happened in France because the election results look different than they did 2 weeks ago. Basically what happened is that Emmanuel Macron, who is the president of France, called a snap election because he believed that he could win an election. Then it turned out he can't win because the French and the British have a very weird system. It's kind of hard to explain, but this parliamentary system is different than America with our two-party system. There are a lot of parties in Britain and France, and they form coalition governments. So, for example, in this French election, 3 parties basically won seats in the House. 2 of the parties are trying to form a coalition government of the majority and find out a platform. It's all very confusing. The reason this happened is because Marine Le Pen, who is, they call her a far-right candidate, but in reality, she's just a right-wing candidate. She has a political party called the National Rally Party, and they were leading in the polls, this right-wing party. But Macron, being a very savvy politician, realized that Marine Le Pen was going to win. A right-wing government for the first time in decades was going to win and take control of parliament in France, which means that they get to appoint a new prime minister. How does that work? I can't remember now off the top of my head, actually, if that means that Emmanuel Macron goes away immediately. I think that's what that means. So Emmanuel Macron would no longer be the president, and then the president gets to appoint a prime minister in France. I believe that's how it works. I could be wrong, but I think that's how it works. So if Emmanuel Macron's party lost, like the right wing took the majority of the seats, Emmanuel Macron would have to step down. They would then appoint probably Marine Le Pen to be the president of France, and the president would then appoint a prime minister from the party. The prime minister in France has very little power. It's actually the president who has most of the power. Again, the system is confusing. It's different than the United States. Macron, being a savvy politician, realized that his party was polling in last place, and he quickly cut a deal with this party called the New Popular Front. Now, the New Popular Front is an actual communist party. That's how far left they are. They are a communist party of the highest order. They are rabidly anti-Semitic. They believe everything that here in this house we hate. They are they want to redistribute wealth. They want to raise taxes. They want everyone to work basically for the government, abolish private property, abolish the state of Israel. These are guys who are actual communists. The way it worked is Emmanuel Macron had 200 of his people from his party basically bow out right before the race, which allowed the left wing, this radical left-wing party called the New Popular Front, to swoop in and take the votes, combine the votes from what Emmanuel Macron would be considered the left-wing party, and then they have the far left. So the left-wing party ceded seats to the far left party and basically allowed them to combine their votes into one candidate, which then put them in front of the right-wing National Front Party. It's a little confusing, but basically just through some trickery, they were able to accumulate more seats on the left side than the National Rally right side party, basically just due to backdoor trickery. Even though the majority of the people who voted, if you're picking any one party, voted for the right-wing party. The majority of, not a major majority, but a plurality. A plurality of people voted for the right. More people than voted for the centrists, more people than voted for the leftists voted for the right-wing party. But because of the way that they did this, the left wing actually won more seats. So the New Popular Front, they won 182 seats. Macron won 163, and the right wing won 143. Now, people are acting like, oh, look, we all said that the right was going to win in France, but all the pollsters were wrong again. The left wing won, and this is not actually anything that suggests the right is popular in France. This is all wrong. Again, these are lies. This is a misrepresentation. The right won a plurality of the vote. They did. It was only through some very savvy electoral trickery that Macron was able to strategically drop out in certain places so that they picked up more seats. That was the only reason this happened. It wasn't because people actually liked the New Popular Front or Macron's party more than the right wing. It was just through good political dealing on Macron's part. This is a repudiation of left-wing policy in France, just as there was in Italy. Italy has the first right-leaning government in a very long time right now. Germany is going to go the same route. And Angela Merkel was very unpopular when she left. It will go right. Germany is going to swing back to the right. France is going to swing back. Britain has swung right already. It's been kind of right, but not really. That's kind of why Brexit happened. But Britain kind of did the same thing to Nigel Farage. They kind of maneuvered a little bit to keep him from winning more seats than it was suggested he was going to win. There is a right-wing shift in Europe, just as there is in America, because these left-wing policies don't work. And the biggest one is unchecked immigration. People do not like it. Me personally, Tyler, I love a lot of people who have immigrated to the United States. I have no problem with immigrants. Unchecked immigration is not the same thing. Open borders is not the same thing. Immigration is great for most countries, but you have to control it, and you have to basically allow there to be time for everyone to actually melt together. You cannot just have these people who exist in little alcoves. In France, there are entire sections of France where if you, for example, want to wear a yarmulke, you just can't be openly Jewish in France. The head rabbi of France actually suggested after this, because the left wing is so rabidly anti-Semitic, the head rabbi in France said there's no place for Jews in France anymore. We should leave. That's what he said after this election. You can't have that in a liberal society like France. You have to allow there to be time to come together and allow these immigrants to acclimate to society. You have to allow them to meld. You cannot have this where we're going to basically, imagine we just imported a bunch of people from Afghanistan, plucked them down in a city, and then we said, all right, you can just live here together in this little community. Well, that's great. You have support, you have this, but you have to melt a little. Like in America, Bill Maher once said, it's a melting pot. Why don't you melt a little? You have to allow people the ability to come into society slowly and acclimate to the society. You cannot just allow them to bring societies that are antithetical to the West into the West and expect it to be the same. If we imported a bunch of people from the Middle East who believe in Sharia law and you bring them here, can Sharia law exist in Western society? No, you can't. It does not work. It is antithetical to our way of life. This is the reason why there's a giant rightward swing. It's the reason in America that Joe Biden might lose, and it's the reason in France and Germany and Italy why those left-wing politicians are going to lose, because there are millions of people coming into the country, and the people in those countries are worried and do not like it. There's nothing xenophobic or hateful about saying that. To say, I like America the way it is, I want America to be America, I want the values of America to continue, that's a good thing. America is great. I think America, being America, is good for the world. The people who are in France probably believe the same of France. The people in Italy believe the same about Italy. Germany, maybe they believe it, but, you got some issues over there in Germany. When Germans start to love Germany too much, bad things happen for the world. I'm just going to say historically, the 20th century, Germany, people who believe in German patriotism, they kind of cause some problems. But it's okay to be patriotic about your country and to want your country to be your country. Again, nothing about that is anti-immigrant. Nothing about that is xenophobic. Nothing about that is bigoted or hateful against anyone in any way. But if you come into a society, you have to conform to the cultural morals and mores of the society. That's just the way it is. And in Europe, it's not happening, and people are voting in a way that reflects that they are fed up with it. And I don't think any of the left wing in France is going to take that message, but they should. If they were smart, they would. You would be on the left and say, all right, maybe unchecked immigration's not actually making us that popular. We should probably fix it. But then everyone on the left will eat you for lunch. So it's hard to do. Anyway, we're going to leave it there for the week. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Like, comment, share. Do all the fun stuff that I tell you to do every week, and I appreciate all you who do. And we will catch you guys next Friday.